Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
Greetings and welcome to yet again another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scot McKay, as Scot McKay on Twitter, on TikTok, on Clubhouse, and on Truth Social. Real Scot McKay on Instagram. The website is mountaintoppodcast.com. Hey, if you're on YouTube, look up my channel. It's my name, SCOTMCKAY, and you'll find videos of all sorts of things, not only the video representations of this particular show, but also a lot of other quick videos that will help you get better with women, of course. And if you're not on our Facebook group, I know I say this every show, guys, but we're having a good time over there. We're talking about beautiful women. We're talking about boring boyfriends on Better Call Saul episodes, all kinds of fun things. And as a matter of fact, by the time this show airs, that series will be over and we'll know what happens. But as for now, the time that we're talking about that, there's one episode left to go. So that just lets you know how long between recording episodes and actually dropping them there really is. Not a whole long time, I guess. And on that note, it has been a little bit too long since I've had my returning guest back on the show. His name is Marcus Oakey. He's from just outside London in the UK, and he is your charisma coach. Not only yours, but mine. The whole idea of being a charisma coach is very interesting. I suppose that's the first place we should start. Marcus Oakey from the UK. Welcome. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back, Scott.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I'm glad I was able to get back in the seat and have a chat with you today.
Yeah, man. Now, see, that's the thing. It is always a pleasure to have you on this show because by definition, you're a personable sort, or you wouldn't be, quote unquote, eating your own dog food out there. I mean, after all, if you're a charisma coach, you got to be at least somewhat interesting and attractive and dynamic and winsome, correct?
Well, these are the things I tell myself about me. But yes, you've definitely got to be interested in self-improvement and doing something with your life and hopefully leaving people better off than when you found them.
Yes. Well, I would hope any coach worth their salt would do that, right?
One would hope.
Yes. So when people come to you as a charisma coach, and I would personally define charisma as the art of being both charming and influential. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yeah, that's a pretty good definition. For me, charisma is the ability to evoke emotions in others whilst making them feel safe and comfortable. And charm is one aspect of charisma, but there's also spontaneity, which is probably what we're going to talk a bit about today, but also the ability to connect, the ability to have a great attitude as you move through life, and also, as you mentioned, your ability to influence.
Yes, as long as it's not coercive, but merely charismatic, influential, and charming.
Absolutely.
Now, meanwhile, there are a bunch of guys out there going, yeah, buddy, my ex-wife inspired lots of emotion in me, but I wouldn't exactly call her charismatic. So what's the difference there?
Well, I think really where guys and girls stumble with charisma is it's making people feel emotion by being that force yourself. So for example, if I want somebody to have a joyful experience in my presence, it's best if I feel joyful first. And if I want them to feel all ragey, then if I'm tensed or stressed, then that's going to communicate through my words. It's like that for everyone. The way we talk really embodies what emotions we're feeling at the same time. So as we're chatting, if I'm relaxed, I'm more likely to put the people I'm talking to in a relaxed mood. So emotions themselves aren't bad or good. They're just neutral. And I think the deeper connection you have with somebody really comes down to how many emotions you've shared with them. So if you think about your closest, nearest and dearest, you've shared happy times with them, sad times, testing times, hilarious times. These are all like piano keys. And the more chords you can push down, the more of those keys you can press, the stronger that connection. So sometimes when you just end up communicating with somebody on through one emotion, that limits the quality and the depth of the connection you're going to share with them.
Sounds both melodic and confusing at the same time. Complex.
Well,
there
is an element of chaos to charisma. It's probably one of my favorite aspects of charisma, actually, which is going into the unknown. But essentially, yeah, if you can be welcoming of all emotions, and I think really what a good, operator of charisma is about. It's about being able to navigate emotions, being able to transmute them from perhaps one emotion, say frustration, into excitement, or sadness into fun. That's really where the magic happens.
Now, that's really fascinating. As you're talking, Marcus, I'm thinking about a lot of guys who kind of understand the importance of leadership as masculine men, but think of it more on a cognitive decision-making level than an emotional, social level. And meanwhile, we all kind of live nowadays in this entertain me culture. We watch life happen on TV, which we talk about a lot around here. No sense in rehashing that. But I don't know if a whole lot of guys have really wrapped their heads effectively around this idea of people following our emotional lead. In other words, lots of people out there are cranky, they're kind of distant, flat out boring, which is something we're going to focus on today, right? And they're thinking someone else is going to come rescue them from this, if indeed they feel like they would like to be rescued. Meanwhile, there are a lot of women out there who are bored stiff, who are not doing a whole lot of anything, perhaps a little depressed, aren't feeling particularly safe or comfortable. Maybe they're scared by what they're watching on TV or seeing tweeted about on Twitter. And they're sitting around going, somebody rescue me from this. Where's my knight in shining armor? Meanwhile, all of us guys are going, whoa, wait a minute there, Trigger. We don't go around leading people emotionally. That wouldn't be very manly. Yet, it seems to me that the guys who do understand this not only are more charming and more influential with people, charismatic, right? At least by my definition. But by your definition as well, they're also helping lead other people out of this emotional ennui or even this emotional abyss in some cases, to the extent where mental illness doesn't flavor that to the point where we can't really influence it. But lest I get too deep in this, it's really very true that we as men can influence how other people feel. And if we do that in a positive way, it's like magic, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think with dating, with flirtation, we have a lot of attention placed on seduction. But I like the other angle, which is, as you say, the magic of being memorable, of being a bit different, of creating something that wasn't there before. A story perhaps that you tell somebody that, hey, I met this person and they changed my life, or I just had this magic moment with them. So you stand out. Now, what you mentioned there was very interesting, how the idea of male leadership is to be almost emotionally unreactive. And there's good value in that, of being able to hold space. So what does that look like? Well, you're in a situation where there's chaos going all around. Maybe somebody's running around screaming. Like, for me, the epitome of masculinity is to not be emotionally reactive to that moment, to be aware of it, to take it in, but not to join the herd, as it were, and run around joining that emotion. On the other hand, being emotionally proactive is, I think, a very strong masculine trait. So emotionally proactive would be, for example, for a man to burst into song. Hooray, I'm going to burst into song now. Like, they're expressing their joy in a moment. So I think where men stumble is they tend to get caught in the trap of being emotionally reactive rather than emotionally proactive. And when one is emotionally proactive, that's when you can change reality for yourself and the people who step into your sphere.
Sea shanties. That's the middle ground there.
Absolutely.
We can be manly and burst into song.
Exactly. I think, it's about time you had a musical halfway through one of these podcasts. So now would be a good time, maybe.
No, it's not.
Okay.
We're not going to do that. But I admire your innovation. It's a good spirit. Keep it up. All right. So anyway, you're talking about first dates. I can't believe, well, maybe I can believe it actually, the number of field reports I've encountered where women will come to me and go, this guy, he just talked about dark, negative things for our entire first date. And I'm not talking simply about, we sat there and ragged about our exes mutually for however long we had to endure this first date. But guys are bringing up like death and guns and thinking like this is something she wants to talk about, when in reality, women just want to have fun. Girls just want to have fun. Cyndi Lauper, right? And it's so true. Yet men show up with this dark, negative outlook on things. At the very least, they're stoic. And, I'm a man. I'm not allowed to have fun. I'm supposed to be dead serious, And then they wonder why the women don't really want to go out with them again. So I think the first step in solving first date peril would be, why is it, first of all? And I know that's a very intimidating question. It's a why question, which tends to feel incriminating. But I think it's fair to ask why we as men think we're going to show up on dates and have something good happen when we're not about helping her have any fun. And second of all, how do we get out of that? How do we transform that mindset? Because after all, the topic of the day is all work and no play drives women away. And of course, makes us a dull boy as well. So riff on that.
I will. Well, I think for many men, for myself, when I started off on this journey, there was a desire to get a date right for the obvious reasons of, a happy date, happy life. And because we want to get something right as men on that date, things like experiences like being nervous, losing control, having to face judgment come up. And it really stifles what we're really like, our creative side, our creative self. And so the values, the virtues that a man needs on a date, instead of being suffocated by those experiences, the virtues of curiosity and vulnerability are what give way to playfulness. So when I was back in my dating days, but even now when I'm out and about moving through life in a flirtatious way, I'm always thinking, I wonder what will happen if I said this. Or I wonder if I mention this at this exact moment, what the result will be. So I'm always curious, and that changes the way I engage in the conversation. I'm also vulnerable. So I'm being okay with myself to be judged by the person I'm talking to. So if I say something dumb, and I say something dumb all the time, hopefully not too much on this podcast, but if I say something dumb, I'm okay with being judged that, okay, dude, that wasn't very good, or that wasn't funny, or you suck. Like, I'm cool with that. These are just labels to me.
Well, the sooner you get over yourself and aren't offended by that, the sooner everybody else is going to move on and probably like you more for it anyway.
Yeah, well, one of my peers, a guy called Jay Doo's a fantastic hypnotist. He has a question he asks, and he says, if you're ever given a label, like if you're ever called weird or creepy or strange or anything like that, are you that or are you more? Because I always like to not just limit myself to one label. I like to be all the labels.
Well, wait a second. Do I really want to be a double shot of creepy, though?
Oh, maybe if everyone else is creepy, or maybe you're in a room full of weirdos and creepy's actually a cool place to be.
Thing to do. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Fair enough.
So all styles of play have a value in the right context. So what I see a lot of guys doing is they want to get the date right. And by doing that, they're not curious. They're not sharing the attitudes of playfulness. So I thought it might be helpful if I just mention what those attitudes are.
Yes, go for it, because I think a lot of guys think it's not very masculine to be playful. Curiosity isn't something we really tend to equate with being any fun. It's just sort of, all right, I like stuff. I'm interested in a variety of things. I'm a jack of all trades, maybe master of some. But this concept of curiosity is really underrated. I'm a very curious person. I think everything is interesting, and therefore I can hold a conversation with people who are interested in things that perhaps I know little about, because I'm actually interested in what they're all about and willing to learn. I think that's something a lot of guys don't see as being very important, perhaps because they've never put this idea of being curious into practice before and seen the incredible benefits that come from it. And then playful people tend to be feminine people in the eyes of men, or at least immature people. I mean, play, that's for little kids. So it becomes this cluster effect of doom that men really just shoot ourselves in the foot when we're trying to interact with women, because they do want to have fun. They do want to feel heard or feel felt, as my friend Mark Golston would say, perhaps not physically at first, right? And we're supposed to move from there. But I mean, if we're trying to ram this square peg of masculine stoicism into the round hole of charming feminine creatures, if you'll pardon the rough sexual pun there.
I picked up on that.
Yeah. It really is what men tend to do. And we're just not thinking like human beings who are trying to attract women, are we?
Right. I completely agree. The issue, I think, is that you have the masculine energy, the masculine way of moving through life, and you have a feminine way of moving through life. The masculine very much being pushing against things, creating, building. The feminine being about being in the present, experiencing emotions. And I think, why limit yourself to just one of those modalities? I think a true master of playfulness, a true master of masculinity even, will be able to harness both feminine and masculine energy. So when I be playful, I step into a more, I suppose, a more creative space. I may move into a more feminine energy temporarily. Doesn't mean I necessarily stay there, though. So it's more of a tool to play with. Now, in terms of the masculine, when we're young, we're creative, we play, we learn, and think about all the learning that a child goes through between the ages of 0 to 14. I know you've got kids, Scott. So there's so much growth that happens in that time. And then, by the time they get to the teenage years, unless they're really proactive, the playfulness starts disappearing, or it gets transmuted into things like sports that have rules. And that's still a good thing. Sports are awesome. However, as we get older and older, the growth stops. We get to our 20s, maybe late 20s, and for most people, their personalities get, in my opinion, cemented, unless they are active in trying to find new ways to grow. So curiosity is a new way to grow. It's a way to, it's a way, first of all, to accept that we don't know the future. We don't know what's going to happen necessarily if we say a certain thing in a certain situation. And we're okay with whatever result happens.
So this idea is fascinating to me, that curiosity is the magic elixir against becoming set in your ways later in life. One of the things that comes to mind is a conversation I had with the lady behind me at the grocery store the other day. Our grocery store chain here tends to play 80s music while we're shopping, which is better than like elevator music or something, nobody really wants to hear. They're rather intentional about the music they're playing. And Jack and Diane by John Cougar Mellencamp comes on. And it's about two 16-year-olds. And yet, at the same time, the refrain says, "Oh yeah, life goes on long after the thrill of living is gone." And the song's playing as I'm checking out my groceries. And I just turned to the woman behind me and I said, "I've never understood this song." And of course, I like to start conversations with people inductively so that they don't really know where I'm going. So the intrigue is already there. Why would you not understand this song? And of course, she gave me the predictable answer. Well, why? Why would you not understand this song? I said, well, how can you be 16 years old and have already lost the thrill of life? How sad. And she looks at me and goes, I know, right? What is that about? But that's why that song has always bothered me. Are people really lacking in curiosity to the point where they're teenagers and life kind of just goes on and there's really nothing new to see around here, folks? Meanwhile, I'm in my 50s and I'm amazed by every new cool thing that happens across my computer screen. As a matter of fact, I'm a little ADHD about it. I just think everything is cool. I want to know about everything, at least to some degree. That's the first thing I thought of. The second thing that came to mind, and you were talking about this a couple minutes ago, is this idea of men kind of seeing fun as femininity. And let's face it, Marcus, you kind of gave lip service to that. When I'm being curious, when I'm being fun, when I'm being playful, I'm entering into my feminine. Well, I think for a lot of guys, that would restrict them from leading women into a place where women are having fun and being playful. So what I would love for you to comment on is the difference between being effeminate, which of course probably wouldn't ignite women's feminine passions with sexual polarity. I mean, we can agree to that. I mean, if you're going to attract women sexually, you have to be masculine to catalyze that feminine sexual energy. But where I think a lot of guys get crossed up is if I'm supposed to lead a woman into being playful, help her have fun, how is that masculine leadership as opposed to me simply acting like a woman? That's where a lot of guys really get confused. Would you have anything to offer there?
Yeah, well, I think the greatest seducer of all time that we know about or is popularized was Casanova. And he was renowned for covering himself in perfume and stepping into his feminine energy, not necessarily being effeminate. So for me, effeminate is more about your body language choices, your voice tonality choices. and how you're expressing yourself in a more sort of a feminine avatar. When I'm using the term feminine energy, I'm more drawing attention to the chaotic nature of conversations. So the highest form of masculinity, as far as I'm concerned, is the male who embodies gentleness. So what does that look like? Well, that's probably a guru or a lama sitting on top of a mountain, being completely at peace. There is no need to be masculine and or feminine to play with those emotions. They just are being. But back to this idea of stepping into the feminine. It's not that I'm saying you should be moving through life being completely effeminate. It's more that you should look for where the feminine sees the feminine. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say I go to a soccer game, and if I just turn up in normal clothes, I'll take to the bleachers and I'll watch the game. But if I am wearing the kit of the team and I step on those bleachers, I'm going to connect with people in the stadium a lot easier, because I'm almost sort of signaling that, yeah, I'm part of the same team as you. I'm part of the same family. So if I can demonstrate emotional energy in my conversations, if I can make jokes or have fun, the feminine is wired to that. Like, females are wired to respond to emotion more strongly than guys. And so what that does is it creates a connection. It creates a sense of emotional intelligence and social intelligence. It's showing, hey, that I can speak your language. And so by doing that, that creates a connection, that creates a foundation for further conversation, where that conversation might be serious, right? It might be more in-depth. It might be more masculine driven. So in that way, the feminine, being able to connect to your feminine energy, allows you to communicate with those who are more principally feminine based far easier than if you just come in as masculine and rigid.
Well, one way I would look at it, that I don't think is necessarily at odds with how you're looking at it, but perhaps complementary to that, is women bring to the table everything that is wonderful and fun and joyful and pleasant about life. I like to say it's everything we live for on weekends. Meanwhile, men are the providers, protectors, and enablers of that feminine state, whereby women can be free of fear and relax into not having to worry about a thing and simply be feminine. So men create this sense of safety and security and comfort. All of that is further down the pyramid towards the base of Maslow's hierarchy. You know, if we're not feeling safe, there certainly is no time to have fun just yet until we get to that point of feeling safe, right? So men have to lead. You know, Marcus, this is one of my major soapboxes, but I think a lot of guys just simply do not comprehend how much fear women live in. So if we show up, and you alluded to this about 10 minutes ago, but I think it's worth bringing back up right now at this stage in the conversation. If we as men are scared little boys, and we're afraid of rejection, and we're afraid of how we're coming off on this date, and oh my goodness, what if she doesn't like me enough? If we fail to conquer our own fear-based emotion, and I'm using that word carefully, before we're confronted with this first date, right, then it probably won't go well, because our masculine leadership is not enabling this femininity across the table from us. It's making it worse. So this man, this guy we're talking about, whoever he is, this avatar of masculine femininity enabling energy, comes along and he is leading. He is lifting fear from the woman by welcoming that playfulness, kind of instigating it. That's the word I want to use. That's why playful banter is so much fun, because it challenges a woman's femininity to come out and play. It's not that you're acting like a female human being. It's that you're inviting this femininity you find attractive to come out and play. So an example would be, you wouldn't go out on a date and go, oh my God, that's like so amazing. I'm like so happy to be here. Because that would come off like you're some sort of teenage cheerleader. Hopefully I didn't do that imitation quite as well as I think I just did. But I'm a character actor by trade in my own mind. Nevertheless, if you walk up to a woman who's handing out samples of wine at the local grocery store, which is not mythical. That's an actual example here. My standard line for her is, oh my goodness, you're going to cause me all kinds of trouble. You're a troublemaker, right? So
Yeah.
I can say that in a masculine voice, but I'm accusing her of all kinds of fun, playful, intriguing things and putting her in a little bit of a fantasy zone. And of course, she's just going to eat it up. And the next thing you know, she's trying to impress me with her response to my invitation to come out and be playful. Hopefully that's a clear example. I don't want to muddy the water any more than that, but I think that's the kind of thing you're getting at as being a good idea. So we're on the same page, right?
Yeah, we are. I realize this is such a very serious conversation about playfulness, which is kind of fun.
Well, you think so? I mean, I'm
yeah.
accusing women of being troublemakers and whatever. That's kind of fun.
In a great way. I mean, I love that example you mentioned about, going past the wine shop and you see somebody handing out free samples. So in my mind, what I like to do is I like to think of, what you shared was a great line. So I always think, what would I have said in that situation? Because there's loads of times I'll see situations to start a conversation playfully and I won't have the right thing to say. And so what I make a point of doing is always, without fail, thinking what I could have said.
Well, curiosity, as you mentioned before, leads to being observant.
Yes.
And being inquisitive.
Yes.
And that is a side benefit of being curious, is you really don't draw a blank when it comes to conversations. It's also a side benefit of getting out of your own way, truncating the act of taking ourselves so seriously in that context, relaxing and just taking a look around. Because when we're so wadded up in fear of rejection ourselves, and we're not really very observant because we're not really very curious, we're just robbing ourselves of very easy and fun and, dare I say, flirtatious conversation. And I didn't mean to hijack your point. Please continue. But I just thought that was important enough that it bared underscoring.
Oh, yeah. Well said. The point I was alluding to was that if observation fails us, a very good habit to build, to build that creative, that playful muscle, is to think, well, what could I have said? So as you were giving me that example, I was thinking, I think my line would have been, I'm trying to work out if this is the best job or the worst job in the world for an alcoholic. I don't know how that's going to land, right? But and then I'll think again, right, what's another thing I've said? Who cares?
If he's offended, exactly. Just laugh.
Right. So I love if I can get a reaction from somebody. Now, I mentioned earlier about these attitudes that I hold, and I wanted to share those because I always think the best way to learn is to find the attitudes of the teacher rather than the techniques and the tools. Because the attitudes, like you said, in Maslow's pyramid, they're the foundation. So one of the attitudes I'll always have is naughtiness. I'm always trying to be a bit naughty. Now, I do that because it gives me instant freedom to break conventional rules. It's what allows me to push buttons and to poke around a bit. So that's why I would say, for example, that line.
Naughtiness is underrated because naughtiness is the bridge between platonic and sexual conversation. It is the very bridge itself.
It is.
If you're having an innocuous, neuter conversation, let's use that word, neuter, and you bring up something suddenly that kind of isn't allowed, and it can be just barely over the line of being innocuous, then for some reason her feminine, playful energy is just going to get revved up. And what I think few guys really grasp is when women are feeling female, they're going to start feeling horny. Just like when a woman really makes you feel like a man, the purposes behind you being a man and her being a woman to begin with are sexual. So this is a natural progression. So when I say just barely above the level of innocuous, I might walk up to that same woman handing out samples of wine after I accuse her of being a troublemaker. And she goes, me, troublemaker? Why would you say that? She can say it with a perfectly straight face, although there'll probably be a little playfulness. There'll be a playful twinge in there somewhere. I'll go, well, you're yet another woman trying to get me drunk before you even know me. Now, see, that's a little naughty. That would imply what another guest of this show called benign wrongdoing, which is a wonderful, wonderful device. You're trying to do something terrible and awful to me, and you're going to overplay how naughty it is when really it's a nothing burger. You're trying to get me drunk and it's only lunchtime. And she goes, I would do no such thing. And then when you kind of give it permission and perhaps oxygen by saying something like, well, I suppose it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so maybe you're not being so awful towards me. Maybe I should just go ahead and give in. Then not only have you made it okay to be naughty in the moment, you've ramped up the flirting a notch. And, I like to think of flirting as a dial instead of a binary switch. And the next thing you know, it's game on. And I'm sure a lot of guys are out there going, well, it's easy for you to say all that. Well, I've had a lot of practice. There's no easy button here. You go out and you talk to women, figure out how women respond to things, take those vulnerable risks in good ways, like you were saying, Marcus, and then put all of this to the test. And the next thing you know, the words are going to come easier to you because it won't be the first time, for example, a woman's tried to give you a sample of wine at lunchtime and you know what works.
Where are these women who are giving out all this free wine? There's different rules going on in the United States than there is in England. I'll tell you that.
I keep trying to buck the trend of people bashing the United States and repeating that this is still the greatest country on earth. But I mean, some people listen, some people don't. What can I say?
Well,
and when they're raven-haired Latinas with cute little smiles and bright eyes, that just exacerbates the whole phenomenon now, doesn't it?
It does indeed, Scott.
Yeah, that's what we got here.
A good little exercise for practicing naughtiness is go into any store, and if you just say to the clerk or the person standing around, just go, "You look so bored." Now, depending on your voice tonality, they will give you instant feedback to whether you said it in a naughty way or a non-naughty way. Here's a hint. If they laugh, you said it well. So if you're listening, just think about all the ways you can say you look so bored. So you can say like, "You look so bored," or "You look so bored." This is just a little vehicle to play with, and
it would take a special person to carry that second one.
Anyone listening can do that. Just takes practice.
Fair enough. All right, continue. I'm intrigued.
Okay, so naughtiness is the first attitude. The next attitude, there's 10 of them, so hopefully we're going to get through these. But the next one is self-deprecation. This is your ability to be flexible with your status. So you're okay with having fun poked at yourself. It frees you from the fear of making mistakes. So if you can welcome any label somebody gives you, you'll be able to self-deprecate, which sounds like self-defecate in a bit of a way. Right, the next one is patience. Your ability just to be at peace and let the person you're talking to sync up with your humor. So when you're telling jokes or you're making little gags, you don't have to ram them down someone's throat. You can just take your time. The fourth attitude is being able to pivot. In other words, it's so important that you change topics or you can improvise a response on the spot. If you're talking about death, for example, and guns, as you mentioned, Scott, on one of these dates, and the person you're talking to isn't biting, pivot, change the topic.
Or if they start it, make sure you pivot it because you see this going nowhere fine.
Exactly.
Help them out. Help them help themselves. Right.
If they put a gun on the table, that's a different kind of date.
A lot of people in Texas would think, now that's my future wife.
Right. In which case,
perhaps myself included. Chicks with guns are hot, I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that leads us on to our next attitude, which is cheerfulness. The mood you bring into a conversation is going to define the conversation. So I'll give you a quick example of this, Scott. Let's say that you're being really generous and I needed to borrow $50 off you. I know. But, I was just curious to see if you'd bite.
Am I doing this well? How did I do?
You're doing great.
Okay, great.
Okay, so let's say I'm going to ask you for $50, and I'm going to do it in two different ways. So the first way I'm going to do it is I'm going to say, "Hey Scott, I really need $50. If I can just borrow it for a week, and I'll pay you right back." Or I could say, "Hey Scott, I really need to borrow $50. I just need to borrow for a week. I'll pay you right back." Which one of those two would you more likely lend the $50 to? If you were feeling...
There's no such thing as, I know this is going to be a total derailment of your example.
Okay.
But this is a teachable moment. Gentlemen, anytime you lend $50 to someone, it's a gift. It's not a loan. You'll never see that $50 again. Just count on never seeing that $50 again. And if you do, it's a nice bonus. But I'm going to go ahead and play along, Marcus Oakey, and tell you that if you were more cheerful, I probably wouldn't give you the money because I would think you're playing me or being a little too frivolous about it and trying to butter me up. Whereas if you were more serious about it, I would take your request more seriously. But I would also think perhaps if you were coming to me with this homeless mentality where you're trying to go, oh, poor me, I really need your help, man. It's really, really bad right now. You know, I would probably not be willing to give you the cash either. If you came to me with some kind of middle ground and just laid it on the table and said, dude, I don't really want to have to do this, but man, I'm getting crushed out here right now. I need $50 from payday, and you're like the only guy I know to ask for. You know, I suppose that would be more serious than playful, but I wouldn't respond favorably to either extreme.
Well, you were right, Scott. You'll never see that $50 again. And so it was good that you trusted your instincts.
Well, at least I'm right about something here.
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling I'm wrong about the rest of it. So go ahead.
Well, that example, really what that was to do was to illustrate that in both cases, I said the same thing, but my voice tonality was different. And you trusted neither, which is absolutely fine. We can say the same types of conversation, but they can be received completely different. In this case, they were both received the same way. Me not getting $50, that sucks for me. But it's really good just to experiment with your voice tonality. Generally, though, if you're cheerful, whatever you say in a cheerful way will usually get you a slightly better result than if you just say it deadpan.
Now, if Tigger and Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh fame
great example,
were both ladies' men, aspiring ladies' men, Tigger would get all the women and Eeyore would be a frustrated chump.
I think that was a great example, yeah.
And one I've used before when taking guys out in field. And one can actually play this phenomenon like a musical instrument. I'll say to guys out in field, all right, we're going to talk to this woman, and this time she's going to love me. She's going to think I'm wonderful. And they'll go, wow, that was really amazing. It worked. And then I'll go, all right, next time she's not going to like me. And bear in mind, I'm the same guy, dressed in the same clothes, in the same environment, the temperature is exactly the same outside, yada, yada, yada. And I go and talk to another woman, and she's like, yeah, I need an escape route. I got to get out of here. I'm not having much fun with this conversation. All right, I hear your mommy calling you. Bye now. And the difference was Tigger versus Eeyore. Not to an extreme in either case, right? We're not talking about extremes here. But this light, playful energy versus this, oh, yeah, everything sucks energy. Probably not going to work. This really droning, boring dial tone versus being there to help lift up the fun factor, to help her feel playful and make her feel more feminine. And I'm the same guy. So all these guys are talking about looks and height and your shoes matching your belt. I mean, hey, that's all well and good, but the same woman can have a very different response to you in the moment based on the energy you bring. You're 100% onto something here.
Yeah, that demonstrates so well the importance of just being able to create as many emotions as you can, and that negative emotions aren't necessarily bad. Playing that game with the same woman is also interesting. Trying two different modalities of conversation. Just something to think about.
Yeah, making her suddenly not like her boyfriend anymore because you showed up.
Wait, I am her boyfriend. Oh.
Bad for him, good for me.
Right.
I'm kidding, of course. I don't run boyfriend destroyer game, not intentionally.
No. So the next attitude is being able to hold connection to your shadow. Now, the shadow in self-improvement is a very deep topic, but basically...
your dark side. Yeah,
it's your dark side. And it's being able to access any of the macabre or diabolical humor by going into the unknown. So I think the best resource for this is any kid's story written by Roald Dahl. He was a master of it. You know, so
the real Willy Wonka is very different than the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
it's just that little cheeky dark side. It's like when somebody says, "Oh, this person hasn't turned up." It's like, "Oh, perhaps something ate her." You know, just throwing something random.
A little nonsense now and then is relished by the wisest men.
Yes,
for sure.
So that shadow is where all the creativity emanates from in conversation, I find. Not
to be confused with bringing up guns and death and murder and that horrible car crash that killed an infant in California a couple of days ago. That's different.
Heavy. Yeah.
Not heavy. Still light. It's just naughty and perhaps whimsically mysterious.
Yes. And on that note, the next attitude is being able to hold space.
A term I actually like. Even though it's kind of woo-woo-ish for a guy like me who's typically practical. But I think holding space perfectly describes what it's supposed to be. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, for me, holding space is just about allowing the other person to express themselves. So when tension comes up in the conversation, as a man, we're not being emotionally reactive to it. We're just acknowledging it. And we're allowing that person to express themselves. And that being able to just give somebody the space to express themselves, that's such a gift to give to people. And yet it's also what comedians experience when they deliver a joke on stage. They get applause and they hold space. They relish in that applause. It's soaking up that other person non-judgmentally.
Well, I think a lot of guys also try to solve problems when they find out a woman is experiencing one. Whereas women famously, in chorus are saying, gosh, why can't men just listen? Why don't they just hear me out instead of trying to fix everything? So instead of finding a solution, if we just acknowledge that a woman is feeling something, sometimes that's exactly what she needs.
It reminds me of that really great bit on 2.5 Men where Charlie Sheen just says, I understand, to everything. And women are like, oh, this guy, he understands me.
Just because he said so.
Just says, I understand, and nothing else.
Well, there's that psychological trick, if you will. It's kind of a Jedi mind trick, but well established in psychological circles, where if we simply repeat the point the other person just made, they really feel understood and listened to.
Really understood and listened to.
Yes, right.
Let's change it to self-amusement.
Okay.
I'll playfully change it to self-amusement. So what is self-amusement? That can just be as simple as sitting on a beach, pebbly beach, and throwing stones at a bucket. Right? It's anything that you do that just amuses yourself, that adds some emotional stimulation to your day, keeps you connected to the moment.
Which is the first rule of being funny, by the way. One can't expect something to be funny to someone else if you're not laughing at it in your head already. If it's not funny to you, trust me, dude, move on. Put that one on the shelf and find something else to say. But as far as self-amusement goes, I think that's underrated. I think you have struck gold there. Because if we don't know how to help ourselves have fun, how can we enable other people to have fun? I'll tell you the truth. Once I got halfway decent at online dating and I already had a date or two coming up or a woman or two in my life, I would write women purely for my own amusement. I mean, I would crack myself up writing things to women. The shining example I could think of offhand, and this is in my book, Deserve What You Want. I actually talked about this, is a woman said, I only want a man who is honest, sincere, and has integrity. And I wrote her, I was already laughing when I wrote her back because I said, oh, that's great. We're perfect for each other. Because I only want a woman who believes in repetition, redundancy, and reiteration.
Excellent.
And I'm dying laughing as I'm typing this. And of course, she had no sense of humor and didn't write me back. But, I don't exactly feel rejected because, hey, it was amusing to me. So there was the intrinsic value right there, regardless of the outcome.
You've hit the nail on the head. I
thought so.
Well, I was at a, I have to just share this really quick. I was at a boxing boot camp where you have to do all the training and whatnot. And one of the things we have to do is tire flipping, where you flip those big tractor tires over. Anyway, it was the end of the training.
I'm already having fun just listening.
Yeah, I know, right? So we were running around doing the quote unquote cool down, and somebody was returning the equipment and they were wheeling this huge tire tractor across the room. And there we were running in single file. And I looked at the girl behind me. And
the whole tractor or just the tire?
Just the tire, unfortunately.
Okay. Tractor tire. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So this tire is rolling along and it's right in front of my path. So I turned to the girl behind me and because the first thing I thought of, this reminds me of some sort of obstacle in a video game. Like here I'm running. Do I dive through the middle? Do I jump over the top? So
the giant boulder in Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So totally valid. That would have worked as well. And I turned to her and I couldn't even construct the joke because I was exhausted by this stage, pretty much like I am now. And I said, it's like a sort of video. And she just burst out laughing because she was thinking it too. And the point I was trying to make there is what you so eloquently mentioned is
ironically enough what you so eloquently
yeah, put words together and made a good sentence.
Oh man, you're good at this, Marcus Oakey.
Oh, thank you. It sounds like Marcus Oakey. Yeah, what it all comes down to is it's got to make you laugh first. So I'm always laughing. I win every time I make a statement. Every time I start a conversation, I've already won. I'm already laughing because the thing has made me laugh so much that if they're going to come along with me on the ride, that's great. So just like how you sent that message, if that had landed, this is marriage material. This is girlfriend material. Perfect. But that person wasn't in sync with you. And that's great. That's fine. You just weeded them out. So having this absolute joy that you're not starting a conversation to get something from somebody. You're doing it because it's just the final step in an experience where you've made yourself laugh and you're just expressing it. You're just sharing it.
Another example from the annals of my online dating history, and that's with 2 N's, by the way. A woman wrote something about a man full feeling her fantasies, 2 words, FULLFEELING. And this was back when messages had subject lines still on Match.com. The reason why they got rid of that is because people got so hung up on the subject line and finding the perfect one that they ended up not writing to women at all or writing to each other at all. That's the actual story behind why Match did away with subject lines. They wanted more interaction. And I simply put regarding, RE : feeling full is what I wrote her.
Oh man. Did she reply?
No.
It's
okay. I had a date on Friday anyway. Who cares?
No
I was
problem.
making myself laugh.
But that's what it comes down to. And where all that laughter happens is in my final attitude that I want to share today, which is the imagination. So the imagination for me is my sandbox testing ground. That's where I play out all my jokes, where I think of things. I imagine situations happening, little stories that have come up. And I just imagine myself telling them or sharing them or just seeing what actually comes out of the imagination. And being imaginative, reading, listening to music and imagining visuals to it, all these sorts of little exercises are what sharpen your mind. So when that situation does come along where that person's handing out free booze on the street, that you have that perfect line to say because your imagination's already probably run through it. Like my imagination was running through it when you mentioned it. So
my imagination is already actively imagining free booze on the street as we speak.
Oh God, what are we doing with our lives? We should be out on that street, just slamming beers. That'd be amazing.
It's 5:00 somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So those attitudes, they underpin playfulness for me, and they allow me just to be loose, be free, and have those enjoyable conversations with women. And in doing so, I find that I just have a much more interesting way of moving through life. Conversations aren't boring because I'm taking risks.
Well, I think that's wonderful. And I'll tell you, the one point I would bring up to kind of punctuate this whole conversation is, gentlemen, stress kills you. Not taking things lightly, not getting out of your own head, getting so wadded up over everything quite literally wrecks your health and shortens your life. And men who laugh, men who help other people lighten up, not only are you going to make more friends and influence people Dale Carnegie style, you'll be healthier and you live longer. I believe in that. So I mean, the value of a show like this one, an episode like this one, Marcus, isn't only found in the obvious benefit of attracting more women and making women love you. It's living a better life and a longer life and having a better quality of life for a longer period of time. So I think this conversation has just been wonderful. And I think the work you're doing is God's work, my friend. And what I want to do is I want to direct these guys to your incredibly fun, playful, and entertaining and curious website, which is basically the Willy Wonka's chocolate factory of coaching, I'm sure. And to do that, I'm going to direct them to mountaintoppodcast.com/Marcus, Marcus. And Marcus, what are they going to find when they get there?
If you come to my website, Your Charisma Coach, you'll find loads of videos of me demonstrating all this in-field. And you'll also be able to get a free chapter of my ebook, which is one of the most powerful lessons for creating change. And if you want to work with me, Scott, you kindly said I do God's work. That's because when people see my prices, they say, Jesus Christ. But yeah, if you'd like to work with me, there's details there as well.
Oh my goodness. What are we going to do with you, Marcus Oakey? All right. So mountaintoppodcast.com/Marcus, Marcus. How could this show be anything other than fun and exciting? I mean, time flew. Look at this. Marcus, thank you so much for coming back. I'm sure you'll be back again and again because there are so many things to talk about when it comes to this particular topic. And I'm sure you could go on and on as I could for hours. Thank you so much, my friend, for returning.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah. And guys, if you want even more fun, after you've gone to Marcus's site and just can't get enough, definitely head on over to mountaintoppodcast.com after that and see what we've got going on. I've got free downloads there for you. I have a book called Sticking Point Solved. Yours free, covers just about any potential dilemma you'll ever happen across when dealing with women, relating to women, dating situations. It's yours for free. And that's actually an excellent way to kind of get acquainted with what we do around here, how we talk about relationships with women. And if you're looking for a coach in the area of getting better with women, well then I'm definitely your guy if you're resonating with what you're reading and with what you're hearing around here. Visit mountaintoppodcast.com, click on the red button that gets you on my calendar for 25 minutes and won't cost you a dime. We can talk about where you are, what your goals are, and put a plan in place that gets you there. While you're at mountaintoppodcast.com, be sure to give some love to our sponsors, Origin in Maine, Keyport, and Hero Soap. All three of those sponsors have been with us for a couple years now, and it's simply because not only do they believe in this show and the message here, but I believe in their products and use them almost every day, if not every day. All of that's there for you at mountaintoppodcast.com. If you partake of any of the goods from any of our fine sponsors, you can use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 with each and get an additional 10% off your order. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scot McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.